Hello, guys. Welcome to our weekly My Side of the Mountain. As you can see on the screen, we're reading page 82 through 93. I hope this speeds things up. We're only doing 11 pages. I hope that helps, but we need to pick up pace or we're not going to finish the book by the end of the year. So, that being said, let me start reading. We're at right at August 29th. If you're following along on Bookshare, as I recommend, please make sure you have that page open. August 29th. The raft is almost done. Bando has promised to stay until we can sail out into the deep fishing holes. Remember, Bando was that teacher that he thought was a bandit running away from the policeman, but it turned out that he was a teacher. Bando and I found some clay along the stream bank. It was as slick as ice. Bando thought it would make good pottery. He shaped some jars and lids. They looked good, not Wedgwood, he said, but containers. We dried them on the rock in the meadow. And later, Bando made a clay oven and baked them in it. He thinks they might hold the blueberry jam he was making. And for those of you guys that had taken art class, it's much the same process. You just make sure you dig up some clay. It's kind of like really thick mud, and then you let it dry out in the sun, and then you can bake it, and it gets pretty hard. Not quite as hard as what you make in art class, but pretty close. Bando got the fire hot by blowing on it with some homemade bellows that he fashioned from one of my skins that he tied together like a balloon. A reed is the nozzle, and I thought that might be unfamiliar. So these are bellows. You squeeze them, and it shoots air out, and it helps make fires hot. August 30th. It was a terribly hot day for Bando to be firing clay jars, and he stuck with it. They look jam worthy, as he says, and he filled 3 of them tonight. The jam is good. The pots reminded me of crude flower pots without the hole in the bottom. Some of the lids don't fit. Bando says he will go home and read more about pottery making so that he can do a better job next time. We like the jam. We eat it on hard acorn pancakes. Later, Bando met the Baron Weasel. Today, for the first time. I don't know where the Baron Weasel has been this past week, but suddenly he appeared on the rock, nearly jumped down Bando's shirt collar. Bando said he liked the Baron best when he was in his hole. September 3rd. Bando taught me how to make willow whistles today. He and I went to the stream and cut 2 fat twigs about 8 inches long. He slipped the bark on them. That means he pulled the wood out of the bark, leaving a tube. He made a mouthpiece at one end, cut a hole beneath it, and used the wood to slide up and down like a trombone. We played music until the moon came up. Bando could even play jazz on the willow whistle. They are wonderful instruments, sounding much like the wind in the tops of the hemlocks. Sad tunes are best suited to willow whistles. When we played the Young Voyager, tears came to our eyes. It was so sad. And I looked that up. I wasn't sure. Voyagers is kind of spelt funny. So I wanted to look up what the Young Voyagers was. So it says it's a story, a book, kind of similar to this book, I guess. And it says a colorful group of traders, Indians, and soldiers march through the story of a boy who runs away to join the famed Voyagers. So I guess it said that it was based on true events. So I guess the Voyagers were this group of explorers that explored America. And then I was like, well, why are they singing that? Why are they making a song out of it? So then I looked up this song, and this is the Young Voyager song that goes with that book. It says, "From the wilds of the north comes a young voyager with his buoyant canoe, well laden with fur, gladsome and free. Little cares he, for there's joy in the heart of the young voyager. There's a song on the lips of the young voyager, and his voice sounding far sets the forest astir. Gladsome and free, little cares he, for there's joy in the heart of the young voyager." So they were singing that song. I don't know why they thought it was sad. I guess maybe They thought that Sam was the young boy. There were no more notes for many days. Bando had left me saying, "Goodbye, I'll see you at Christmas." I was so lonely that I kept sewing on my moccasins to keep myself busy. I sewed every free minute for 4 days, and when we were finished, I began a glove to protect my hand from Frightful's sharp talons. One day, when I was thinking very hard about being alone, Frightful gave her gentle call of love and contentment. I looked up. "Bird," I said. I'd almost forgotten how we used to talk. She made tiny movements with her beak and fluffed her feathers. This was a language I had forgotten since Bando came. It meant she was glad to see me and hear me, that she was well fed and content. I picked her up and uh, squeaked into her neck feathers. She moved her beak, turned her bright head, and bit my nose very gently. Jesse Coon James came down from the trees for the first time in 10 days. He finished my fish dinner. Then, just before dark, the Baron came up on his boulder and scratched and cleaned and played with a fern leaf. At the filling, we were all back together again. So Bando ended up leaving, and now he's back with just his animal companions, in which the autumn provides food and loneliness. September blazed a trail into the mountains. First, she burned the grasses. The grasses seeded and were harvested by the mice and the winds. Then she sent the squirrels and chipmunks running boldly through the forest, collecting and hiding nuts. When the forest, when she frosted the aspen leaves and left them sunshine yellow, then she gathered the birds together in flocks, and the mountaintops was full of songs and twittering and flashing wings. The birds were ready to move to the south, and I, Sam Gribley, felt just wonderful, just wonderful. I pushed the raft down the stream and gathered arrowleaf bulbs, cattail tubers, bulrush roots, and the nut-like tubers of the sedges. I think I had shown you guys most of those. So I didn't put any in. Those are all different plants that he's gathering and eating. And then the crops of crickets appeared, and Frightful hopped all over the meadow, snagging them in her great talons and eating them. I tried them because I had heard they're good. I think it was another species of cricket that was meant. I think the field cricket would taste excellent if you were starving. I was not starving, so I preferred to listen to them. I abandoned the crickets and went back to the goodness of the earth. I smoked fish and rabbit, dug wild onions by the pouchful, and raced September for her crop. October 15th. Today the Baron Weasel looked moldy. I couldn't get near enough to see what was the matter with him, but it occurs to me that he might be changing his summer fur for his white winter mantle. If he is, it is an itchy process. He scratches a lot. So he's saying this is the weasel, and if you remember the other pictures of weasels, they were brown. So in the winter, weasels turn white. They get white fur, and so do rabbits. So he's saying that the weasel looks moldy because that white fur is starting to come in like a fuzzy white mold you might see on bread. Seeing the Baron changing his mantle from winter awoke the first fears in me. I wrote that note on a little birch bark curled up on my bed and shivered. The snow and the cold and the long lifeless months are ahead, I thought. The wind was blowing hard and cool across the mountains. I lit my candle, took out the rabbit and squirrel hides I had been saving, and began rubbing and kneading them to softness. The Baron was getting a new suit for winter. I must have one too. Some fur underwear, some mittens, fur-lined socks. Frightful, who was sitting on the foot post of the bed, yawned, fluffed, and thrust her head into the slate gray feathers of her back. She slept. I worked for several hours. I must say here that I was beginning to wonder if I should not go home for the winter and come back again in the spring. Everything in the forest was getting prepared for the harsh months. Jesse Coon James was as fat as a barrel. He came down the tree slowly, his fat falling in a roll over his shoulders. The squirrels were working and storing food. They were building leaf nests, and skunks had burrowed and plugged themselves in at dawn with bunches of leaves. No drafts could reach them. As I thought of the skunks and all the animals preparing themselves against the winter, I realized suddenly that my tree would be as cold as if the air, as the air, if I did not somehow find a way to heat it. Notes. Today I rafted out into the deep pools of the creek to fish. It was a lazy sort of autumn day. The sky clear, the leaves beginning to brighten the air. Warm. I stretched out on my back because the fish weren't biting and hummed. My line jerked and I sat up to pull, but was too late. However, I was not too late to notice that I had drifted into the bank, the very bank where Bando had dug the clay for the jam pots. At that moment, I knew what I was going to do. I was going to build a fireplace of clay, even fashion a little chimney of clay. To be small, but enough to warm the trees during the long winter. And this is what the clay looks like. So if you are interested in making your own clay, you need to find this like thick mud, and then you can kind of like work it into this clay here. Next day, I dragged the clay up the mountain to my tree in my second best pair of city pants. Had the bottoms of the legs, stuffed them full, and as I looked down on my strange cargo, I thought of scarecrows and Halloween. I thought of the gang dumping ash cans on Third Avenue and soaping up the windows. Suddenly, I was terribly lonely. The air smelled of leaves, and the cool wind from the stream hugged me. The warblers in the trees above me seemed gay and glad about their trip south. I stepped halfway up the mountain and dropped my head. I was lonely and on the verge of tears. Suddenly there was a flash, a pricking sensation on my leg, and I looked down in time to see the Baron leap from my pants to the cover of fern. He scared the loneliness right out of me. I ran after him and chased him up the mountain, losing him from time to time in the ferns and crow feet. We stormed into camp, an awful sight, the Baron bouncing and screaming ahead of me, and me dragging the half scarecrow clay. Frightful took one look and flew to the end of her leash. She doesn't like the Baron and watches him well, like a hawk. I don't like to leave her alone. End notes. Must make fireplace. It took 3 days to get the fireplace worked out so that it didn't smoke me out of the tree like a bee. It was an enormous problem. In the first place, the chimney sagged because the clay was too heavy to hold itself up. So I had to get some dry grass to work into it so it could hold its own weight. I whittled out one of the old knot holes to let the smoke out and built the chimney down from this. Of course, when the clay dried, it pulled away from the tree and all the smoke poured back in on me. So I tried sealing the leak with pine pitch, and that worked all right, but then the funnel over the fire bed cracked, and I had to put wooden props under that. The wooden props burned, and I could see that this wasn't going to work either. So I went down the mountain to the side of the old Gribley farmhouse and looked around for some iron spikes or some sort of metal. I took the wooden shovel that I had carved from the board and dug around. What I thought must have been the back door or possibly the woodhouse. I found a hinge, old handmade nails that would come in handy, and finally, treasure of treasures, the axle of an old wagon. It was much too big. I had no hacksaw to cut it into smaller pieces, and I was not strong enough to heat it and hammer it apart. Besides, I didn't have anything but a small wooden mallet I had made. I carried my trophies home and sat down before my tree to fix dinner and feed Frightful. The evening was cooling down for a frost. I looked at Frightful's warm feathers. I didn't even have a deer hide for a blanket. I used the two I had for a door and a pair of pants. I wished that I might grow feathers. I tossed Frightful off my fist, and she flashed through the trees and out over the meadow. She went with a determination strange to her. She is going to leave, I cried. I have never seen her fly so wildly. I pushed the smoked fish aside and ran to the meadow. I whistled and whistled and whistled until my mouth was dry and no more whistle came. I ran onto the big boulder. I could not see her. Wildly, I waved the lure. I licked my lips and whistled again. The sun was as cold, steely color as it dipped below the mountain. The air was now brisk and Frightful was gone. I was sure that she had suddenly taken off on the migration. My heart was sore and pounding. I had enough food, I was sure. Frightful was not absolutely necessary for my survival, but I was now so fond of her. She was more than a bird. I knew I must have her back to talk and play with if I was going to make it through the winter. I whistled, then I heard a cry in the grass. Up near the white birches in the gathering darkness, I saw movement. I think I flew to the spot, and there she was. She had caught herself a bird. I rolled into the grass beside her and clutched her Jessie's. She didn't intend to leave, but I was going to make sure she didn't. I grabbed so swiftly that my hand hit a rock and I bruised my knuckles. The rock was flat and narrow and long. It was the answer to my fireplace. I picked up Frightful in one hand and the stone in the other, and I laughed at the cold, steely sun as it slipped out of sight, because I knew I was going to be warm. This flat stone was what I needed to hold up the funnel and finish my fireplace. And that's what I did with it. I broke it into two pieces, set one on each side under the funnel, lit the fire, closed the flap of the door, and listened to the wind bring the first frost to the mountains. I was warm. Then I noticed something dreadful. Frightful was sitting on the bedpost, her head under her wing. She was toppling. She jerked her head out of her feathers. Her eyes looked glassy. She is sick, I said, picked her up and stroked her. We both might have died there if I had not opened the tent flap to get her some water. Cold night air revived her. Air, I said. The fireplace used up all the oxygen. I've got to ventilate this place. We set out in the cold for a long time because I was more than a little afraid of what our end might have been. I put out the fire, took the door down, and wrapped up in it. Frightful and I slept, with the good frost nipping our faces. Note, I would cut out several more knot holes to let the air in and out of my tree room. Tried it today. I have Frightful on my first fist watching her. It's been about 2 hours and she hasn't faded and I haven't gone numb. I can still write and see clearly. Test Frightful's healthy face. And there's like a little example of a homemade fireplace, what he was talking about here. This one looks like it's made out of clay too. So he's saying that this part was the funnel going out. And if you see this too, this is a well ventilated place, all these holes and cracks, but his tree is sealed up. So the fire eats the oxygen and they didn't have any air. So that was the problem there. So guys, that's it. Make sure you watch the whole video, take the quiz. I'll post the links and I'll see you guys on Monday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.